Welcome in everybody to Fandom NFL. I'm your QB1, Joe Pizzapia, and guess who's back to dig inside the numbers again? It's Chace Daskalos back again, former G over at Next Gen Stats. He was actually the G in the Next Gen. I don't know if you guys realize that or not. He worked there for years. He's going to be back on NFL doing a lot of stuff this year, but luckily we've got him this year as well. If you haven't already checked out Chace the Data, that's Chace with a C, by the way. Don't screw it up, everybody. Check out chasethedata.com, check out his Instagram, and check him out right here, back for some more discussion. Chase, everybody was blown away last time we were on the show about the Devon Achane stuff. You kind of converted not just me, but a lot of other folks too. How does it feel to be able to come on the show and move the needle like that with just one program?
That was a tough task because, yeah, like I said, I felt like I was on an island with the Achane thing. But, yeah, man, I came on the show about a week ago. We had an absolute blast. I blinked. And now I'm back on Fandom NFL. Can life get any better than this?
I say no. Look, man, Chace is going to be here during the year. We're still working out what day of the week it's going to be. But every single week, we're going to give you some of the numbers that you need to learn from the previous week and also to look forward to in terms of guys that you're starting and sitting. So, again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Drop your comments below. Like this video. Hype this video. When we get to 5,000 subscribers, which could be in a week or so, with the way we're growing here on the channel, Marshall Faulk jersey is going to go to somebody. That's right. It's autographed, it's signed, it's authenticated. It's on its way to my house already, unlike the last stupid giveaway, which was a whole other drama. But again, if you want this, don't forget to ring the bell till it goes ding so you never miss a piece of content here on Fandom NFL, and we can get this jersey to you. And of course, we've also got fun other things to help you with all your drafts still going on. I know we're still in draft season. RotoWire, don't be a tool. Use the tools. Download the app. Go to rotowire.com. Run mock draft simulations. You've seen them on the show. Use the assistant GM. Let it help you with all the insights to cover your bye weeks, to build the best roster. Use the promo code JOEYP. You get 20% off and you help the channel. And of course, all the in-season tools also are available for you. So use all that stuff. All right. First thing we're going to talk about, we got a couple really cool things. We got a running back battle we're going to discuss. We've got another late tight end that's coming back around for the second time in a week. We've also got a QB we're going to talk about who's very divisive. But first, I want to get to one of my favorite topics with you, the Chargers offense. Obviously, the Chargers offense is potentially huge this year. We've got maybe bell cow Omari and Hampton healthy. We've got a healthy offensive line. We got Justin Herbert coming off an incredible season for him, despite all the injuries and situations that he dealt with. We've got a wide receiver room that's still pretty deep here. Ladd McConkey could have a huge year. You've got QJ still around. You have got, obviously, Trey Harris still in the mix, too. There's a lot to like here. And also, when we talk about Mike McDaniel, too, I mean, when he kind of burst on the scene, it took a little while, but in 2023, that offense that he had led the NFL in total offense, explosive in every single metric that you could possibly imagine back. And then things deteriorated as the health of that team deteriorated. And what I thought was always a questionable hire as a head coach, but a great offensive mind. Now, early on, there's been some things from the preseason that we've taken notice of. Chace, talk to us about some of the pre-snap motion, some of the other things going on with the Chargers here where we think that we can look and maybe apply that to certain players and what their upside is in 2026.
Yeah, so preseason is really a funny kind of complicated beast because teams normally always hide their tendencies during the preseason, right? Like you don't want to show your cards when the game doesn't really matter. Maybe all the things that you've installed during the offseason program. Historically, across the board, things like motion rate, any fun or funky personnel or formations, all of those rates are very low in the preseason compared to the rates that we see in the regular season because teams are trying to keep it a secret, right? But with all that said, hilariously, the Chargers have used motion on 85% of their plays so far this season. That is very clearly the Mike McDaniel effect. No offense used motion at a higher rate during his time with the Dolphins. And now during this preseason, he's letting it absolutely rip with the Chargers. I've done a bunch of research into the benefits of motion for offenses. It's a great thing for offenses, specifically the wide receivers who were set in motion on a play. For the Chargers, that's Ladd McConkey. I think that's a guy that both you and I are very in on. And it's just kind of funny because I don't normally look too much into preseason data because, again, it's obviously can be incredibly noisy, but this was a data point that I couldn't really ignore, As I mentioned, motion in the preseason compared to the regular season is down like 16% across the board because teams are trying to hide it. But like Mike McDaniel doesn't care. So I've been pretty bullish on the Chargers offense this offseason. This was one of the things that I wanted to see, and they're hiding nothing. They're going to use motion all the time during this regular season.
Yeah, and I think what makes it so important too is you're going to find that motion leading to the mismatches on the defensive side. And then it is problematic for, I think, greener defensive coordinators to prepare their teams in a short period of time. It's one thing when it's one thing in division, right? You're going to deal with the Denver Broncos. That's a great defense. You're going to deal with the Chiefs. But I think when they start going outside that division and outside the conference too, where these teams don't game plan for each other nearly as much, it's going to be very problematic, I think, for those out-of-conference games, especially when you look at the schedule. So pay attention to those. Pay attention to Ladd McConkey. Talk to me about Omari and Hampton in this offense, too, because, you hear some of this, like, Keaton Mitchell stuff and some of this and that. Like, I have put my head down and continued to just kind of ring the bell for the bell cow of Omari and Hampton. Is that still the right thing to do with everything that you've seen so far? I know it's small sample size. I get it. It's preseason, but it still feels like the best path to victory for this team is for Omari and Hampton to really carry the load at the position this year for this team.
There's a couple interesting data points on Mike McDaniel's run scheme specifically that I've looked at. And that's when he was with the Dolphins. A Dolphins running back led the NFL. I'm going to get really data nerdy here, but
let's go.
Expected yards per carry is when a running back receives a handoff. How many yards was he expected to gain on that play? It's really all about number one, run scheme, and number two, run blocking. Hilariously, across the 4 year, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, a Dolphins running back led the NFL in expected yards per carry. So Omari and Hampton in that run scheme, you get Rashawn Slater back, you get Joe Alt back. Like, the running lanes will be there. I know that. Again, I come from a data background. I don't think the film bros really like Omari and Hampton. I think there's a little bit of a lack of vision there. Things that they saw on film where maybe he's not necessarily a very special player, but in the McDaniel offense, you don't have to have incredible vision if the hole is just gaping, right? So
we have Raheem Mostert scoring 20 touchdowns a couple years ago. And I think when you give Mike McDaniel a quarterback of the size and arm strength and knowledge, Justin Herbert, who's been in the league for a couple of years, like, he's not green. To me, this is a very dangerous situation for a team that had a good defense last year, has a good head coach. There's a lot to like here, I think, with this offense, and I'm continuing to invest in it. I think everybody else should. Is there anybody else in this offense too? Like, are you a QJ guy? Are you a Trey Harris guy? Like, I'm very hyper focused on Ladd, Omari, and Herbert, and then letting the rest go. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest fades that I have in my rankings at the wide receiver position is Quentin Johnson. If there was a guy to target later in drafts for me, it's Trey Harris. There's interesting stuff there with his 13 personnel usage. Like, he was kind of the guy that was on the field for that. He's a really good blocker. There's really good data behind being the wide receiver on the field for those 13 personnel snaps. Again, we'll see if that was a massive trend last year. Another funny thing too, when I was looking at that motion rate in the preseason, there's been like no 13 personnel usage at all, like across the league this preseason. I think it's probably because teams are, again, kind of trying to hide it, but it was a massive trend last year. It didn't carry over into the preseason, but there could be a slight value boost for Trey Harris, or if the Dolphins are one of those teams that uses 13 personnel and Trey Harris is the guy that's on field, it's a pretty valuable route to run for a wide receiver. I'm not like incredibly bullish on Trey Harris. For me, it's really consolidated to Justin Herbert, Omari and Hampton, and Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Ladd's going to have a breakout season. I was a big fan of Ladd. I was a big fan of his in college. People were like, why you like him so much? He didn't have great numbers. I'm like, if you watch the games, you know why you like him so much. And Georgia those years was winning by so much that they never had to throw the football. So it didn't matter. Like, that was the thing when you watch him play. It's like, it doesn't matter. He's crushing thing. All right, let's talk about a quarterback in Jackson Dart. Polarizing, spends a lot of time for Big Blue in the Big Blue tent, which is also problematic as well. Now, we know the style of play that he has. It's aggressive. It's fun. I like Jackson Dart in the process. When he was coming out, I compared him to Jeff Garcia. To me, that was the big comp for me. A player that had good wheels, very similar throwing platform. If you put them side by side, I guarantee you'll go, oh my God, it's Jeff Garcia. And Jeff Garcia had years where he got plenty of teams in through deep in the playoffs. I think if you surround Dart with talent, he's going to be good. Last year, he got his opportunity, 15 touchdowns, just 5 picks. That's nice. You see the projections this year, 3,200 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 11 picks. If he gives you this with 500 plus rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, he's going to be a monster at the quarterback position in fantasy. Question is protecting the quarterback and Jackson Dart to a certain extent protecting himself. So what does the data say about investing in Jackson Dart in 2026?
Dart's a tough one for me because I wasn't really blown away by the quarterbacking skills of him in his rookie season, but he averaged 22.3 fantasy points per game across his full starts, which is crazy because only 5 quarterbacks averaged over 20 fantasy points per game last season. That's also crazy considering him and Malik Neighbors, who I think is a top 10 receiver in the league, by the way. They were on the field for just 12 dropbacks last year. So like we haven't seen that connection at all. Dart had 402 dropbacks with no Malik Neighbors on the field last season. But passing stuff aside, the obvious draw to Jackson Dart is the rushing upside. And what's great with him is he does it in 2 different ways. First, his 10.1% scramble run rate last year, second highest in the NFL. So when he drops back to pass, he's going to run, right? Drake May was number 1 in that, by the way. But what Jackson Dart also does that not many quarterbacks do these days is the designed run element. And I've looked at the trend of design quarterback runs over the last few seasons, and it's on the decline, whether it's teams are getting smarter and kind of want to protect their quarterback against injury. I don't know, but teams are using quarterbacks.
Oh, I think that's absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because you've seen Jaden Daniels miss significant time. You see Patrick Mahomes with the torn ACL. It's like we can't, if you don't have the quarterback, you can't compete in the NFL. Like that's it. You either have it or you don't. So I think the design runs have really come back down for that very reason of protecting the QB. And it's one thing if they improvise. And that Drake May stat, I don't think that's going to be sticky year over year now that you have Brown and Dobbs. Would you agree?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Especially too, I think actually something I kind of want to look into is I think younger quarterbacks tend to scramble more often or kind of earlier in their careers as they're sort of learning how to process and stuff. I think a lot of those younger guys will sort of tuck and run more often than the veterans. But anyways, back to the design run game. One guy who's like not decreasing in that is Jackson Dart, right? So across his 12 starts, he had 31 design carries for 168 yards and 7 touchdowns. No quarterback had more than 17 design carries in those weeks. Here's where it gets crazy. If you want to translate that designed run production to fantasy points, that is 58.8 fantasy points from designed runs alone. Joe, that is the equivalent to 14.7 passing touchdowns. Passing touchdowns. That's what your basically pocket passer quarterback would have to throw to match Jackson Dart's designed run fantasy point production. 58.8 is 14.7 passing touchdowns. That is insane. That's a cheat code, right? That's like free fantasy points right there. Now, Lamar and Jackson Dart, and I'll make the comparison because of John Harbaugh, like they're very clearly different talents, but obviously there's that coaching change in New York. But I do think that like bringing in John Harbaugh certainly doesn't have a negative impact on Dart's rushing projection, right?
Does Matt Nagy as an offensive play caller, like that would be the thing to me, because you also have the offensive play caller and he's the run game coordinator, and this guy's like they've gotten so hyper focused on it. I almost don't know which of these offensive minds I have to worry about to figure out the value of Jackson Dart at this stage.
Yeah, there's totally like a mixed bag too, where like I feel like some play callers, some offense coordinators have a couple good seasons, and then they're guys that like you almost like entirely want to avoid with another team. So yeah, just like overall, Jackson Dart is a tough one. I'm kind of like at ADP with him. I am one that very much so subscribes to quarterbacks that have a rushing upside. Like I think I just want those guys in my team. Kind of like what I mentioned. Like if he's getting a free basically 60 fantasy points from design runs, and another quarterback has to throw basically 15 touchdowns to match that, I think I kind of want Jackson Dart.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. Look, I think in that single quarterback streets, the upside of Jackson Dart is too much to pass on, because if he gets hurt, you can pick up Daniel Jones from the waiver wire, Tyler Shuck from the waiver wire, and you can still get by if you have a good roster. Like that's how I look at it. To me, Dart becomes more complicated in Superflex, because in Superflex, when you have one of your quarterbacks go down for a significant period of time, it really hurts in a different way. The replacement value is not there. Like, even if you have a decent third quarterback, it's a big drop off. So it's funny because where quarterbacks are valued more, I'm less apt to take the chance on Jackson Dart. But man, in single quarterback leagues, when you wait, I mean, would you rather have Jaden Daniels at his ADP or Jackson Dart at his?
I think in basically all the drafts that I've done so far, I have more Jaden Daniels than Jackson Dart, but I'm getting kind of nervous about it because Laramie Tunsil injury, not good.
Not good.
A report yesterday that like the Commanders' offensive line in joint practice was like a disaster. And the Commanders are kind of a team that I've been targeting here and there, whether it's like Rashad White later in drafts, which is now kind of more looking like Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. Stephon Diggs was like a major like late round target for me. And I've been taking Jaden Daniels. I don't feel like incredible about it right
I got
now,
my first Jaden Daniels in redraft share yesterday in CBS Experts League draftathon draft. And it just fell so far. I was like, look, it just makes so much sense right now. I'm just going to take him here, like, because they're so cute. Like, that room of experts is so QB disciplined because they know there's so much value that you actually get a value on some of the other guys because, like, they just shouldn't be there. And you look at, like, you're taking third string running backs here. And I'm like, well, Jaden Daniels is not. I'm going to take Jaden Daniels. like, he's going to make an impact every week. But yeah, I'm with you. The Tunsil injury makes me a little bit concerned. All right, let's pivot to another player here. We just talked about Jackson Dart. Let's talk about a running back situation. Let's talk about the New England Patriots, my New England Patriots, where people don't realize that TreVeyon Henderson last year had a pretty strong year when he was given the ball. The problem was he still had Ramondre Stevenson around, and it still feels like this is a team that wants to control the football, play defense, kind of an old school way. Mike Vrabel's kind of an old school coach in that sense. All of us fantasy nerds want TreVeyon Henderson to literally take the ball and run with it, but it does feel still like Ramondre Stevenson's going to have a really strong share of that backfield, possibly even the goal line carries as well, and that hurts. So I've been avoiding this situation altogether. Which feels like old school doing a Patriot running back kind of fantasy philosophy, right? Remember back in the day, like Bill Belichick hates your running backs in fantasy, so don't go there. I've copied and pasted that recently. But do you see this backfield as one advantage, one way or the other, between Stevenson and Henderson?
For me, this whole situation is really like a debate, or it should be more so like a war on ADP, on average draft position, because like across the board on ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, CBS, TreVeyon is going ahead of Ramondre on nearly every platform. I don't really understand why. I get the intrigue with TreVeyon. It's a second round draft capital. He showed a lot of explosive ability in his rookie season. There's catastrophic holes in his game that relates directly to pass protection that you can see with your eyes when you watch the Patriots. And then it is 100% confirmed by the data. Last season, the Patriots trusted Ramondre with 73 pass blocks. On those 73, he allowed just 5 pressures and 1 sack, which is a really strong 7% pressure rate allowed. TreVeyon only got trusted with 33 pass blocks, so 40 less than Ramondre. And on those, he allowed 9 pressures and 3 sacks. So a 27% pressure rate. That was the second worst among running backs.
And do you remember going into last season, one of the big selling points of TreVeyon?
Yes.
He's such a good blocker. Pass protection. He's a pass pro guy. He's a pass pro bro. Yeah. And the fact that did not bear out, why do you think that didn't translate from college into the pros for him? Do you think it's just a matter of being a rookie and things being too complicated for him?
I think so. But then the training camp reports that I've seen so far is that hasn't gotten any better. So like that it's just kind of like sounding the alarm to me. That 11% sack rate he allowed, that was dead last. Like you can't have Drake May getting killed while you're in pass protection, right? So he was awful. I have a crazy one for you. And it's flashback to the AFC Championship game against the Broncos last year. Which, by the way, that is the second most recent real football game that the Patriots have played, right? There's obviously the offseason program and stuff, but the Patriots logged 64 offensive snaps in the AFC Championship game. Ramondre played 60 snaps. TreVeyon played 4. And that's the second most recent game, that real game that we've seen the Patriots play. Like, that's scary.
Wait, you're going back to the Denver game? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
See, but it wasn't the weather also indicative of that statistic because it was so much snow in that game, and so
it was snow, and it did sort of even out a little bit in the Super Bowl. I believe their Super Bowl snaps was like 43-26, but I just get like a little nervous. Like TreVeyon's going ahead of this guy, and in some of the most important games that they've played, like Ramondre, like very, very clearly out snapping TreVeyon. I haven't even talked about like the efficiency metrics either. What's hilarious because people say TreVeyon Henderson is just so explosive, right? Ramondre had a higher explosive rush rate. Ramondre led all running backs in rushing yards over expected per carry. TreVeyon's a better receiver, right? Well, if you actually look at yards per route, Ramondre actually beat him out in yards per route too. So just like across the board, TreVeyon is like a really, really anxious click for me. And when Ramondre is just going later at ADP, it's very clearly Ramondre to me. Again, like I said, I understand the intrigue with TreVeyon. I think he's a fun player. We saw him rip off huge runs, right? And I think people are really grasping onto that upside without like really realizing the full context of the situation. Where like Ramondre Stevenson was a really good player. The Patriots were super successful last year, and he was really efficient. So like they're really going to go away from that. Is that backfield really going to turn into like a 70% Travion, 30% Ramondre? I don't think so. And I think that's kind of what you would need if you're drafting him where he's going.
All right, we're going to talk about two more guys here on the show. Again, if you're liking this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop your comments, like this video, hype this video. We got amazing in-season content planned for you. We got all the live streams, all the Q&As. We're going to be here 6 days a week at least doing content over at Fandom. And I say we, I mean me, and Chase will be here too. So I guess, he'll be here for some of it, at least one day a week. I got some help for one day a week. But it has been, look, the first time you were on, people absolutely love the show, and I'm so glad that you've been able to come back and share the data with us and go through this stuff, because I feel like, this is the fun. This is like when we start to dig in a little bit deeper and get smarter about things. I want to get smarter about Deshaun Stribling, because this is a player that is on everybody's draft board right now. He is rising very quickly. He is a player, when you look at the stats, and again, he's got a little shoulder issue he's dealing with. The stats are still very low projected wise. 47 receptions at RotoWire, 581, 4 touchdowns. Again, that is, I think, a very, very reasonable floor for this player. People keep asking me. They asked me in the live stream just this past week, where would you take him? And you see him going up into this stratosphere now where he's between Chris Godwin, Quentin Johnston, Michael Wilson, Michael Pittman, Mekhi Lemon. Like, these are kind of the names. And I understand the love of Stribling. I get the upside. You have to understand he's still even though he's in a system that could be very good for him, that it seems like he's built for, there's still a pecking order of veterans where he is at best maybe the fourth guy potentially. I keep saying he should be the fourth guy on your fantasy roster as your fourth wide receiver. I think I'm good there, even in 2 wide receiver leagues. I think that it's more of a roster construction than an ADP conversation for me. But Chase, it's feeling like it might be difficult at this stage in the end of days of drafts to get him there. Do you think that is becoming an unreasonable price for Deshaun Stribling?
I don't think so. It's funny. I mentioned I don't really look into preseason data that much because it tends to be noisy. It doesn't really mean that much.
Well, it's also so small. It's such a
nowadays,
like back in the day, back in my time when I was a kid, they'd go out there and they'd play the whole half of football in August, and we liked it. But now they don't do that. Now they play like a series or 2 series, get everybody healthy, get everybody the season. And I get it. There's less preseason games now too. So it is really difficult to glean anything from that. But my God, the short sample of Deshaun Stribling looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what I'll caveat this with is like, but when when it's this loud, I think we should probably pay attention to some degree. And it's the usage of Stribling that has like the alarms just blaring. He's run 22 routes this preseason, as you mentioned, preseason, very small sample, right? 22 routes. That's like nothing. That's not even a full game's worth in the regular season. But he's been targeted on 13 of those routes. That is a 59% target rate. That is the highest by any of the 3,275 players to run at least 20 routes in a preseason since 2016. And it's the highest by 7%. So like astronomical usage, astronomical target rate. Yes, in the preseason. Yes, a small sample, but that is absolutely insane. Funny thing too is there's absolutely like 0 relevant names at the top of that group of 3,275 players. But if you do filter it down to just rookie preseasons, still a lot of irrelevant names, but you do get Amon-Ra St. Brown at 6th, you get Garrett Wilson at 11th. So it's not nothing. It's certainly not a bad thing to have a 59% target rate. I took him in the 9th round of a best ball draft that I was in recently, in a best ball underdog mania, or excuse me, in a best ball underdog draft. I did a couple days ago.
They're all called something funny.
Yeah,
so
whatever.
Best Ballapalooza.
Best ball something underdog millionaire mania
whatever.
something. Anyways, like he went in the 10th round in that. So if you're not going to be super aggressive on him in drafts right now, like you're probably not going to get him. You have to spend like a 9th or a 10th round pick on him.
All right. Well, would you take him over Michael Wilson? That's the name. Like there's one that I still feel pretty good about his role, the offense, playing catch up all the time, coming off a very strong season. Like I would still take Michael Wilson over him. And I think I'm in the minority at this point.
In my rankings, I have Michael Wilson ahead of Deshaun Stribling. So I agree with you.
Now, would you take Stribling or Michael Pittman?
I I also have Michael Pittman ahead.
Okay, because that's the range right now. And then you have
Yeah,
Makai Lemon, who's a rookie too, and
exactly.
the
Yeah,
upside of
it's
him
right
with an
in that
injury.
tier.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take Stribling, because like we're playing to win here, right? Like,
We are.
Is Michael Pittman gonna help you win your league?
No. See, I would take
No.
Stribling over Pittman, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't take him over Wilson, and that's kind of that range where you got to make that decision in the
I
process
totally
there.
agree. Where you're comparing ceiling. Michael Wilson, could he potentially maybe do something similar to what we saw him do last year? Sure, right? And like that's like league winning stuff. Michael Pittman, yeah, kind of not going to win you your league. I do think I need to move Stribling up a little bit, especially as we're talking about like Cortland Sutton or Stribling. Like I think I go Stribling there. I just think like there's just so much more upside.
It's so tough. It's not the up. See, to me, it's just you're banking on, I guess, maybe the inevitable injuries ahead of him, which it does seem like the substation will continue to feed
Yeah,
itself. I mean,
as long as it doesn't strike
I
Stribling.
know, I know, but it might. You're also looking at, it's also preseason. Mike Evans is an older player. I think anything that bothers him, you're not going to push it. Like I mean, he's Mike Evans. He has nothing to prove. What does
There's
preseason
no
mean for?
reason for Mike Evans to be on the
Right.
field
So
right now.
I don't want to overstate those injuries he's dealing with. I think George Kittle, another guy, like you're not pushing, you don't care. It's just there's a lot of, if they didn't sign Debo, it would be a Stribling to the moon kind of scenario. But I also feel like that Debo signing also makes me go, well, they brought in that old guy who knows the offense and is established and he's played with Purdy. Like there's a lot of reasons to still feel like Debo can be a contributor too. So I just don't know if there's enough targets to go around yet. But it does feel like inevitably some of these guys that are older are going to break down at some point too. So I'll tell you what, if Stribling doesn't get off to a good start or he becomes like disappeared in the first couple weeks of the season, I could see a lot of hate drops of
Yeah.
Stribling
Oh, yeah.
where
Oh, in
people
the
lose their mind.
preseason. Yeah. This is why
Um,
preseason doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, and then
I
I
can
am
close
all
my eyes
in.
and see it.
October 1st when he hits the waiver wire, I am all in on the fab on Stribling then because then I think that's the time you got to go have him because inevitably there will be some injuries to these older players, to the Kittles, to the
Mhm.
Devos, to the Mike Evans ahead of him. All right, one more guy to talk about, which he wasn't a guy that we talked about at all on this show. Then JJ was on the program, and now you want to talk about him as well. So Terrence Ferguson of the Los Angeles Rams, not a player that I think a lot of people are looking at because the ADP says he's just a tight end that is buried in the rankings on the waiver wire. But JJ made some cases for Ferguson, and I know you've got a Ferguson case to make as well. He said his big bold prediction, if you watch the end of that show, was that he would be the highest rated tight end named Ferguson at the end of the year. So that was salty, spicy. I don't know, probably not. But what's your take on Ferguson? Because you wanted to highlight him on the program today as well.
Yeah, so he's like the talk of like Rams training camp right now, or like training camp in general, which is kind of a bummer because he's been literally free in fantasy drafts. He still is going super late. I think that's going to change a little bit, obviously, as the steam picks up. He's an interesting study because he barely played at all last season, right? He ran just 168 routes. That was fourth among Rams tight ends, 53rd among all tight ends. But I think it's important to keep in mind that this dude was literally the 46th overall pick just last year. He's a top 50 pick in the NFL draft. And so often we see young tight ends take a little time to get adjusted to the NFL. Trey McBride, who was a second round pick, he had 29 receptions for 265 yards as a rookie. Like he was practically irrelevant. Not comparing Terrence Ferguson to Trey McBride, but just kind of providing context of like, look, even these guys that turn out to be absolute superstars in the NFL, the tight end position is kind of hard to learn, right? One of the most appealing things to me about Ferguson is just the way that Sean McVay uses tight ends and being a part of that offense and having Matthew Stafford at quarterback. As a unit, Rams tight ends saw the fifth most targets in the league last season. Specifically in the red zone, they tied for the most in the league. So there's incredible opportunity there for a guy to kind of take over that room. Keep in mind, that is Colby Parkinson and 33-year-old Tyler Higbee. I think Terrence Ferguson is so much more talented than both of those guys. We know that touchdowns are such a driving force for tight ends, fantasy points production each year too. I just think he has a massive ceiling. I mentioned he only ran 168 routes as a rookie. That was 53rd among tight ends. Here's crazy. While ranking 53rd in total routes run, he led all tight ends in deep targets with 12 and ranked second in deep receptions with 5. That is insane potential downfield usage, potential touchdown upside. for a guy who's going as like the tight end 20 right now, right? 53rd in total routes run, but incredible downfield opportunity. That is like the definition of a dart throw of like a late round tight end. I certainly don't want him as like my first tight end off the board on my teams, but he's like the ideal. If you were to take a tight end maybe early, if you're kind of one of those guys that likes taking Trey McBride in the third, or like Brock Bowers in the second or something like that, and then you just kind of wait on tight end, and you should wait on tight end because you've invested so much into one of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
If you're spending a second on Brock Bowers, which I think is fine, or like a third or a fourth on Trey McBride, you are banking on that guy being a difference maker. So I would not spend another middle round pick, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round pick on a tight end, right? So like that guy to wait on, to me, is Terrence Ferguson.
Yeah, I think the other wing too is if you miss the big tight ends and then you somehow go for that middle group and you miss that too because you're in the middle of a draft and you're at the mercy of like these weird runs that happen, or even at the tail end of a draft and you miss out on a run. If you do have to pivot to one of the more boring guys like the Dallas Goddards of the world, or like whatever that might be, then maybe Ferguson's another. Maybe you double up there and you take that lottery ticket and see what happens in September. But I just want to reiterate for everybody, it's not a week one give up kind of scenario. You have to stay the course through at least the first month of the season with some of these lottery ticket players to see if they work their way into the offense. Every game plan is going to be different for every single day, every single game that they have early on, and it might not show itself right away. So just be aware of that. But these are really good numbers to be aware of because Chace always does that. Now, you can see more of his work at chasethedata.com. Follow him on Instagram. Remember, it's Chace with a C, not with an S. So you're chasing it, but you're not really chasing it. You're chasing it with a C. That's the best way to remember all of that. And remember, if you're watching this video, like this video. It's easy to do. Hype this video. Subscribe to the channel when we get to 5,000 subs, which we're ticking our way up there. Let me tell you, we are making progress. You could win the Marshall Faulk autographed jersey from his Rams days, the greatest show on turf. Not too shabby. That would look pretty good in any sort of fan cave, that's for sure. Remember, use the tools at RotoWire. Download the app. Joey P is the promo code, 20% off. That's what you get there. And of course, you can always also listen to the podcast version wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the major platforms now on Fandom NFL and on Believe Network too. So you can check us out there. Chace, anything else you want to plug here, social-wise? Anything else you got going on for the people?
No, thanks for having me on, Joe. I need to have a conversation with my mom for spelling my name Chace, because it's kind of only made my life a little more difficult.
No,
I'll talk to her
like
about
it.
that.
I like it. It's unique. It's different. I think that's the way to go. So tell your mom she made the right decision, because now everyone's going to chase you with a C. There you go.
Sir.
Say,
yes,
remember
well,
that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back with more Chace later in the season. That's going to do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Chace, I'm Joey P. This has been Fandom NFL.